The heavy courtroom doors swung open. Character. One stepped out, her pace deliberate, eyes fixed on a point somewhere beyond the crowd. The reaction was instantaneous. A wall of photographers surged forward, their cameras firing in rapid, blinding pulses that turned the gray afternoon into a strobe-lit nightmare. There was no hesitation in her gait. She navigated the narrow gap between the barricades, her path clear, cutting through the chaotic energy of the swarm. Every shutter click echoed like gunfire in the confined space. She did not look at the lenses. She did not acknowledge the shouted questions that collided in the air. For years, the public had tracked the trajectory of this private collapse, measuring every leaked document and every headline. Now, the tension of that long public saga concentrated into this single, jagged moment. She reached the edge of the curb, the black sedan waiting just 3 steps away. She stopped for a heartbeat, the wind catching her hair, and turned to face the wall of microphones. The air was thick with the static of 1,000 recording devices. She did not yield an inch of space to the chaos. She pulled a single handwritten note from her hand, the paper stark against the dark surroundings. The crowd went silent, the microphones leaning in like hungry birds. Her voice was clipped, devoid of any fluctuation. "My focus remains on the children," she said. She did not mention a name. She did not look at the cameras. She folded the note, tucked it away, and turned toward the sedan. The metal of the car door clicked shut with a finality that silenced the remaining questions. She did not wait for a response or a follow-up. The driver shifted the gears, the engine turned over, and the vehicle pulled away from the curb. The paparazzi scrambled, their equipment clattering against the pavement as they tried to find a better angle, but the car was already moving into the flow of traffic. The crowd surged into the empty space she had just occupied, voices rising in a frantic, uncoordinated chorus of theories and shouted debates. Cameras remained raised, but the target was gone. The street felt suddenly hollow, leaving only the sound of distant tires and the lingering, restless energy of a crowd denied the answers they had come to steal. The video hit the servers before the sedan even turned the corner. Within 3 minutes, the view count hit 7 figures, a live ticker spinning faster than the eye could follow. In a suburban living room, a woman tapped her screen, the light reflecting in her eyes as she refreshed the feed. A comment appeared. "She is protecting them from the noise." A second later, a reply wiped it away. "He is human. He deserves grace." The divide was not a gap, it was a canyon. Thousands of users typed at once, their fingers moving in a rhythmic, aggressive clatter against plastic keys. The screen became a strobe of conflicting narratives, every post a new attempt to claim ownership of the story. One user shared a screenshot of the handwritten note, circling the words in red, while another linked to an old, unrelated interview to prove a point. The scroll was relentless. It did not matter who was right. The friction of the argument created its own gravity. The digital noise climbed, a rising hum of notifications and alerts that turned the private statement into a public trial. Every refresh added more heat, more accusations, and more static, effectively sealing the two subjects inside a cage of global scrutiny that grew tighter with every passing second. Across the city, the studio light was a dull, singular yellow. Character. 2 sat before a tablet, the screen casting a pale glow against the shadows of the room. He watched the video loop, the numbers climbing, the comments blurring into a white static. He reached for a glass of water on the side table. His fingers hovered, locked in place, before he wrapped his hand around the glass. He did not drink. He set it back down, the contact with the wood sounding sharp in the stillness. He stood up, his chair scraping against the concrete floor. He walked to the center of the room where a portrait stood under a harsh lamp. He grabbed a heavy palette knife from the tray. He did not hesitate. He pressed the blade into the wet, gray paint and pulled it down in one long, jagged stroke. The canvas buckled under the pressure. He dragged the metal edge across the surface again and again, tearing through the eyes, the chin, the carefully rendered lines. The paint curled and fell in thick, heavy ribbons to the floor. The image vanished. He kept scraping until the fabric was bare. The only sound in the room, the rhythmic, metallic rasp of the knife carving through the history he had spent hours building. The news cycle continued to churn, turning private history into a global spectacle. Outside, the internet refreshed, the comments stacking up like debris in a storm. Fans typed, argued, and speculated, viewing the story through keyholes of filtered information. They projected their own narratives onto the silence, desperate to claim the truth. Meanwhile, inside the dim studio, the palette knife hit the floor with a dull, hollow clatter. Character 2 stepped back, his chest rising and falling in the heavy, stagnant air. He did not look at his phone. He did not check the feed. He walked to the window and stared out at the city lights, the grid of the streets stretching into the distance. Across the city, Character 1 moved through her own quiet space, the hum of the outside world muffled by thick walls and closed doors. There were no more statements, no more notes. The storm raged on, but the center had gone cold. The 2 people who had once anchored the headlines had effectively vanished, retreating into separate, silent lives. The world kept talking, but there was no one left to answer. The connection was severed, leaving behind only the echo of a story that no longer belonged to them.